In the year 2135, humans had spread beyond Earth, establishing colonies on distant planets. This expansion, though a marvel of human ingenuity, disrupted unknown civilizations hidden in the stars. The Ziphrans, an ancient alien race, were one such species. They watched with growing concern as humans moved closer to their sacred territories. The first strike. The invasion began on a cold morning in New Cairo. People were starting their day when the sky suddenly turned a strange shade of crimson. Without warning, silver ships appeared, hovering above the city like silent predators. Their smooth, metallic surfaces reflected the sunlight, making them almost beautiful, until they opened fire. Beams of blinding light shot down, destroying buildings in seconds. Streets that had been filled with bustling crowds were now chaos. Panic spread like wildfire as people ran for their lives. Commander Javed Malik of Earth's Global Defense Coalition, GDC, stood in the command center, his eyes fixed on the screens showing the destruction. "We need to hold them back," he said, his voice steady but tense. "Launch all defense drones." Within moments, the sky was filled with human-made fighter crafts, engaging the alien invaders. Explosions rocked the air as lasers streaked between the ships. Despite humanity's best efforts, the Ziphran technology was superior. Their ships moved faster, and their weapons were far more powerful. Meanwhile, aboard the Ziphran flagship Zephyra, Zyrek, a young explorer, watched the battle with a heavy heart. His translucent skin shimmered under the glow of the control panels, and his eyes, filled with sadness, reflected the destruction below. "This isn't right," Zyrek whispered to his mentor, General Zanner. "They don't understand why we're attacking. We must try to talk to them." General Zanner shook his head. "They invaded our space. They threaten our existence. There is no peace with those who destroy." Zyrek clenched his fists. "There must be another way. A scientist's discovery." In a hidden research lab far from the battle, Dr. Amina Rahman worked tirelessly. She was a linguist and one of Earth's top experts on alien languages. Months earlier, Earth's satellites had intercepted strange signals from deep space. Amina had been tasked with decoding them. The messages were complex, filled with symbols and patterns unlike any human language. But as Amina studied them, she began to see a deeper meaning. These were not threats, they were warnings. "These symbols," she whispered to herself, "they're telling us something important." Her heart raced as she connected the final pieces of the puzzle. She rushed to Commander Malik, her data pad in hand. "Commander," she said urgently, "the Ziphrans are not attacking out of greed. They believe we've violated their sacred grounds. They think we're a threat to their survival." Commander Malik frowned. "And you believe they'll stop if we apologize?" "No," Amina said, "but if we communicate with them, we might find a way to coexist." The commander sighed. "We're already at war, Doctor. Talking won't save us." Amina felt a surge of frustration. "If we don't try, we'll destroy ourselves and them. A forbidden alliance." Despite the commander's doubts, Amina continued her work. Late one night, as she studied another transmission, her computer beeped. A new message appeared, this one different. It was not a warning. It was an invitation. Her screen lit up with the face of a Ziphran. His large eyes glowed with a soft blue light, and his expression was calm. "My name is Zyrek," the alien said. "I seek peace." Amina's heart pounded. She leaned forward, her voice steady but cautious. "Why would you risk contacting me?" "Because war will destroy us both," Zyrek replied. "I have seen your world. It is beautiful. I do not wish to see it burn." Amina nodded. "Then we must work together. Tell me what we can do." Zyrek's voice grew solemn. "There is a hidden truth buried in our pasts. Long ago, our ancestors made a pact. We were allies bound by a common purpose. If we can rediscover that bond, we can end this war." The journey for truth. Together, Amina and Zyrek embarked on a dangerous mission. Using secret communication channels, they arranged a meeting on a neutral moon far from Earth's defenses. The journey was perilous, filled with moments of doubt and danger. When they finally arrived, they discovered ancient ruins, remnants of a long-lost civilization. The walls were covered in symbols, the same ones Amina had been decoding. As she and Zyrek worked to translate the messages, a story emerged. Thousands of years ago, humans and Zifferans had fought side by side against a destructive force that threatened all life. They had sworn an oath of unity, but time had erased their shared history. "This is the proof we need," Amina said, her voice filled with hope. "We were never enemies. We were allies." Zyrek nodded. "Now we must show this to both our worlds." The fight for peace. Returning to Earth, Amina faced great resistance. Commander Malik and the GDC were preparing for a final assault, determined to drive the Zifferans away at any cost. "You're asking us to trust them?" Malik said, his voice filled with disbelief. "After all they've done?" "I'm asking you to listen," Amina pleaded. "This war is built on fear and misunderstanding. We have a chance to stop it." At the same time, Zyrek faced his own challenge. General Zanner, furious at his betrayal, declared him a traitor. "You have endangered us all," the general growled. "I have given us hope," Zyrek replied. "Hope for a future where we do not live in fear." In a tense standoff, the leaders of both sides agreed to meet. Amina and Zyrek presented the ancient truth, showing the evidence of their shared past. Slowly, the walls of mistrust began to crumble. A new dawn. The war did not end in a single day, but the seeds of peace had been planted. Through courage, understanding, and the willingness to listen, humanity and the Zifferans began to rebuild what had been lost. Amina continued her work, fostering communication between the two species. Zyrek became a bridge between worlds, teaching his people that peace was not weakness, but strength. And as the stars shone brightly over a universe no longer divided by war, a new era of unity began, a reminder that even the deepest divides can be healed by the power of understanding. The months following the ceasefire had been filled with tension. Humanity and the Zifferans had entered a fragile peace, but this peace was tenuous at best. Though both sides had agreed to stop fighting, there were still deep scars that remained. Distrust lingered like an invisible wall between the two species. Amina Rahman, now a key diplomat between Earth and Zyphora, understood that this fragile peace would require constant effort and, above all, patience. Amina's role was to guide humanity's understanding of the Zifferans, just as Zyrek had once guided the Zifferans in understanding humanity. But now, it was about more than just communicating through words. It was about dismantling centuries of wariness, fear, and differing worldviews. Both sides needed time to heal, but the world was far from a place of tranquility. Under the surface, forces from both sides were plotting. Many on Earth saw the Zifferans as invaders, aggressors who had attacked first and destroyed much of Earth's colonies. On the other hand, the Zifferans saw humans as arrogant, expanding into territories they had long considered sacred. The first major test came when an alien distress signal was received by both sides. It wasn't a message from an enemy, it was from a distant planet, long believed to be dead. The signal originated from a planet called Tarkhan, a once thriving world that had fallen into ruin after an ancient cosmic war. Both humanity and the Zifferans had witnessed the destruction of Tarkhan in their shared history, and neither side had dared to explore it until now. Amina and Zyrek immediately recognized the importance of the signal. It could hold the key to understanding the true extent of their shared past, and possibly the means to prevent further war. Despite the apparent risks, the Council of Earth and the Zifferan High Command agreed to investigate. Both sides dispatched a joint team to Tarkhan, human and Zifferan scientists, soldiers, and diplomats, tasked with deciphering the origins of the distress signal. The journey to Tarkhan was long and dangerous, filled with treacherous space anomalies that tested the crew's abilities and resolve. But as they approached the planet, they discovered something unexpected. Tarkhan was not dead, its ancient ruins were alive with energy, pulsing with an unexplainable force. The team landed on Tarkhan's surface, and the first thing they noticed was the eerie silence. The air was still, the land desolate, but there was an undeniable power emanating from the planet's core. As they explored the ruins, Amina discovered writings that matched the ancient symbols she had deciphered earlier. These inscriptions told the story of an alliance forged long ago between humans and the Zephyrians, an alliance that had helped both species survive the destruction brought about by an enemy known only as the Shadow. As they dug deeper, the team uncovered a hidden temple, where they found the source of the distress signal, a massive, dormant weapon capable of erasing entire worlds. It was a remnant of the war that had once ravaged the galaxy, and it had been buried for centuries. Amina and Zyrek were horrified by the implications. The weapon, if activated, could destroy both Earth and Zyphora in an instant. But there was a catch. The weapon could only be activated by a specific bloodline, one that tied directly to the alliance of the ancient past. Amina and Zyrek realized that their ancestors, through the alliance, had left behind a safeguard to prevent misuse of the weapon. It was a deeply spiritual connection, a bond that transcended species, but only those connected by blood to the original alliance could stop the weapon from being unleashed. The revelation threw both sides into chaos. The Zephyrians believed the weapon was a gift from their ancestors to safeguard their people. Humans, however, saw it as a threat, a symbol of destruction that could destroy all they had built. The discovery led to a political showdown, with both sides vying for control over the weapon. Zyrek, who had once been a symbol of peace, now found himself at odds with his own people. General Xander, still bitter from the war and deeply distrustful of humans, demanded that the weapon be secured under Zephyrian control. Amina, standing at the center of the dispute, called for unity. She reminded both sides of the original purpose of the weapon, a weapon designed to protect, not destroy. But her voice was drowned out by the mounting pressure from both sides. In the chaos that followed, a faction of extremists, both human and Zephyrian, attacked, hoping to seize the weapon for their own purposes. The delicate peace was shattered. It was clear now that the war was not over. Humanity and the Zephyrians were once again at the brink of destruction. But amid the turmoil, Zyrek refused to give up on the dream of peace. He knew that the key to stopping the weapon, and ultimately, the war, lay in their shared history. With Amina's help, he embarked on a final, desperate mission to uncover the truth hidden within the ancient temples of Tarkhan. They faced not only external enemies but the harsh reality that many within their own civilizations were not ready for peace. Together, Zyrek and Amina discovered the ultimate truth, that the alliance forged between humans and the Zephyrians was not simply a matter of diplomacy. It was a bond of life, of survival, that transcended both species. The key to stopping the weapon lay in their willingness to trust each other completely. The final battle for control of Tarkhan's weapon was fierce. The extremists were defeated, but the cost was high. Many lives were lost, and the future of both species was uncertain. Yet in the end, Zyrek and Amina succeeded. By combining their efforts, they deactivated the weapon, preventing it from being used once again. With the weapon rendered useless, the two sides were forced to confront their history. They could not undo the mistakes of the past, but they could choose a different future. The battle for peace would not end with the destruction of a weapon, it would end with the creation of a new bond. A bond forged through understanding, sacrifice, and a shared commitment to a better future. The battle for Tarkhan had ended, but the war was far from over. As the dust settled on the ancient ruins, both sides stood at the precipice of a new era, or an impending apocalypse. The extremists had been vanquished, but their ideals had not disappeared. The scars of past conflicts, the lingering bitterness, and the fear of betrayal were all too real. Trust, once shattered, was hard to rebuild. Zyrek and Amina, now both hailed as heroes and traitors in the eyes of their respective people, found themselves caught between the wreckage of old beliefs and the hope for a new future. The tension between the human and Zephyrian factions intensified in the aftermath of the battle. Though the weapon had been deactivated, the emotional and psychological toll of the war lingered like a heavy fog. Both sides still saw each other through the lens of history, remembering only the destruction and the loss. Zyrek, standing at the ruins of the temple where the weapon had once been housed, felt the weight of his responsibility. He knew that it was not enough to disarm the weapon. The real challenge lay in preventing future wars from erupting. As much as he longed for peace, he understood that it would not come easily. It would require more than just gestures of goodwill. It would require action, compromise, and above all, healing. Amina, ever the diplomat, had her own doubts. She had witnessed firsthand the brutal realities of war, the fear, the hatred, the unwillingness to trust. Even now, as she spoke with leaders from both sides, she saw the distrust in their eyes. Despite her best efforts, she knew that the road to peace would be long and fraught with setbacks. But she was not one to give up easily. She knew that the fight for peace was not just about politics or military might. It was about changing hearts and minds. It was about showing both humans and Ziphrans that they were not so different, after all. That, despite their appearances, their cultures, and their histories, they shared a common desire for survival, for a future free from the cycle of violence. The first step in this journey came in the form of a peace summit. Amina and Zyrek worked tirelessly to organize a meeting between the highest-ranking officials from Earth and Zyphora. The summit was to take place on neutral ground, on a newly constructed station orbiting the moon of an uninhabited planet. It was a place of hope, of potential, a symbol of what could be achieved if both sides were willing to put aside their differences. The preparations for the summit were exhaustive. Both sides had their conditions, their demands, their expectations. Some wanted reparations for the damages caused during the war. Others demanded territory and resources. There were even factions within each government that sought to undermine the peace process, arguing that the Ziphrans were still a threat and that the humans should prepare for the next attack. Amina and Zyrek found themselves working around the clock to keep the talks moving forward. Every day, there were new challenges, new obstacles, and new threats. But they persevered. They knew that failure was not an option, not after all they had sacrificed, not after all the lives that had been lost. As the summit date approached, both sides sent their representatives. Amina stood by Zyrek's side as the leaders of Earth and Zyphora entered the station's central hall. The room was vast, a neutral space filled with the hum of quiet conversation and the soft glow of artificial lighting. Amina's heart raced as the doors closed behind them, sealing them in a room that could determine the fate of two worlds. The first hours of the summit were tense. The human representatives were skeptical, their minds still clouded by the memory of the Ziphran invasion. They demanded assurances that the Ziphrans would never attack again, that they would withdraw from Earth's territories and allow humans to continue their expansion in peace. On the other side, the Ziphrans insisted that Earth's actions had encroached upon their sacred grounds, and that they would not stand idly by while humans continued to colonize the stars. Zyrek and Amina took turns speaking, reminding both sides of their shared history. They spoke of the alliance forged in the face of the shadow, of the ancient pact that had united their people to fight for survival. They spoke of the truth uncovered on Tarkhan, of the weapon that had nearly destroyed them all, and of the common threat that had once bound them together. But despite their best efforts, the summit seemed doomed. As the discussions wore on, it became clear that the leaders of both sides were not ready to let go of their demands. Tensions escalated, and the peace talks were on the verge of collapse. The room was filled with shouting, accusations, and ultimatums. It seemed as though the cycle of violence would never end. And then, in the midst of the chaos, something unexpected happened. Zyrek, who had been silent for several moments, stood up. His voice was calm but firm as he spoke. Enough. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. He had never raised his voice before, not like this. His expression was one of deep resolve, of quiet strength. I've watched as we've torn each other apart, Zyrek continued. I've seen the destruction of our worlds, the loss of our people. And I've seen the possibility of something more, something better. But it will not come through threats, through demands, or through violence. It will only come if we choose to move beyond our hatred and fear. He turned to the human representatives. I understand your fear. I understand your anger. But the war we fought was not a war of survival. It was a war of misunderstanding. And the only way to ensure that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past is to forgive, not to forget, but to forgive. He then turned to the Ziphran leaders. And to you, my people, the past is gone. We cannot live in it. We cannot cling to old grudges. We must look forward, not backward. We must build a future together, one that honors both our cultures, our histories, and our shared desire for peace. The room was silent for a long time after his words. No one spoke, no one moved. It was as if the weight of his message had sunk deep into the hearts of everyone present. After what felt like an eternity, the human leader stood up. Cyrek, you are right, she said. We cannot change the past. But we can choose to move forward. And we are willing to try. And with that, the first steps toward true peace were taken. The next part comes on this channel.